Good evening, buenas noches, ujambo. I come to you this evening with another perception of a Nubian from the Nubian community. First, I would like to mention to all who is viewing me and looking at this Nubian content, our ancient history. Within our history, it often talked about different deities, beings, human beings, and gods. But to start this conversation or dialogue, I would like to mention something our hieroglyphics taught us in ancient Nubia about our deities and my bloodline, as well as other beings that the Most High cast down to this flat earth. One being was a very strong, strict, and serpent-like reptile cast down by the Most High in the deepest blue oceans. Now, every religion, from the Holy Bible, the Quran, hieroglyphics from my culture, as well as the Torah, speak of this being. This being that our great ancestor from my bloodline speak of, which was Horus, had to fight in war against Leviathan. This reptile species, beast and being, is an ancient beast that's been here for a long, long time. And this conflict has carried way before it landed on Earth. But it carries on today. I confirm that what happened in ancient civilization is a modern day replica of what's happening today. That great beast that we're in the belly in, Leviathan, is also applied amongst the codes and the acts of illegal and legalese actions. Some of us may be aware, but some of us may not. But this is definitely the time that we become aware. You may hear this code in the courtroom or in banking because it pertains with commerce or business as the code of Levi. Levi is the suffix of Leviathan. We hold these truths to be historical facts, not just based off the hieroglyphics writings on the wall, but also because we look in history in our modern day civilization. I want you to take note and notice. Every power structure that's over us is developed over us as the beast reptile. Now this beast reptile was mentioned not just in my hieroglyphics but in religious texts. More popular as Genesis as one of the beasts who was cast down to earth by the Most High, as well as one of the beasts who will rise again in Revelation in the Bible, a reptile beast. If you take note and notice, which they call at the United Nations HU, the symbol is a flat earth with a reptile placed above it that symbolizes the power structure of the Pope and the reptile beast. Under the codes of Levi and under the beast of Levi Ether. Also, if you look at the United Nations, their symbology that represents them or symbol is another sculpture of the flat earth, a reef around the earth in some cases to represent like Caesar, the king of Rome at one point in time, and as well as the reptile beast, Levi Ether. We're within a beast-coded legalese or illegal situation. And it first starts, my people, in the hospitals. If you notice the hospitals and pharmaceuticals, they're usually coded or have hospital signs with a stick and a reptile or reptilian type of beast to symbolize their power structure. That's the very first contract where it starts. So if it's not African hospitals or African institutions for birthing children or babies, yes, the beast that controls your first contract. And you see it, if you notice, on pharmaceutical bottles as well as the hospital signs of the great mighty serpent, reptile, dragon beast, Levi Ether. So once your child is born in this beast system. And unfortunately, that's only the first one. There's a second beast. That's just the beast of the oceans that conducts law of the water. Then there's another beast that's growing and brewing. That's the beast of the land. You have to interpret each one of these beasts within the laws. Now, history shows us in my hieroglyphics, as well as the Holy Bible, as well as the Torah from the Jews and the Quran. There's a second beast that doesn't derive in the water or the oceans. The second beast will come with horns. And it also has a revolutional system that does control, if not 2/3 of the earth, 1/3, but probably 2/3 of the earth as growing. And that is the beast of Allah, or in ancient times, us people in the proper civilization would like to say, Allahu Ba'al. This beast is another beast on land who has horns, who's very strong and powerful. But both beasts is beasts who was cast down to the earth by the Most High. These beasts thought that was greater than the Most High. And when they was cast down to earth, it was a promising of religion of two different types of superpowers and cultures and ethnicities that opposed the Africa today have realized in reality that we have power and control and great amount of wealth. But just like Mrs. Dr. Eric said before, the African descent, man and woman, is the most, out of any other ethnicity, we're the most always wanted species, as well as a species that wants to be conquered by other ethnicities because who we are and the great continent we come from. Now, within this beast system comes two different beast religions and beastly laws. One beastly law from the reptile Leviathan, and then you have the codes of Levi that applies to the blacks and some Africans spread abroad amongst this flat earth. And then if you notice in the Bible and the Quran, Muslims and Arabs, when they pray to the east towards Mecca, towards the black stone. The black stone also comes with black codes. That's against who they label black people, though we are not black people. But as long as we comply to black people, both deities and realms have the permission to be permitted to control us by law, codes, and religion and territory. Consequently, the Muslim Arabs, when they pray to the east, they pray to who they call Allah, Ba'ala, and also represented as the black stone. The black stone comes with black codes and legalese, just like the European structure has black Christian codes for black people and black descents. But we're not black descents, we're African people. We are Africans. And the more they try to suppress the law within history, the more we can show and prove who we are. Beyond African, we are people of the land from Kemet. So, back to our modern position and modern day situation that we're currently going through. We have two different beasts trying to control us. We must remember the tragic that the Europeans put us through. Yes. But we also must remember the tragic that the Muslim Arabs put us through as well in North and East Africa before the European colonizers. The Muslim Arabs showed the Europeans how to do it, and then the Europeans tried to perfect it through economical and enslavement. So we must remember both colonizers and both beastly systems, because these beastly systems still control us African descents spread it abroad in America, in Europe, Canada, and other Western countries, or Eastern countries for that matter. There's people in different countries in North and East Africa still being controlled by the second beast that the Most High cast to the earth. And then there's people who still control on the West and South Africa and the Western countries of African descent who still be controlled by the first beast who was cast down by the Most High in the ocean. So we're in beastly systems. We must realize that. The next thing I would love to mention is that us as a people must not only love but understand each other more. Multiple territories as well as multiple different countries. Okay. If we come from over 50 different countries, that means that's over 50 different personalities. To me, it would make more common sense as well as book sense as well as logic sense for us to define our purpose through the bloodline of our sovereign territory. The only way we can do that is to know where we're from. Africa as a whole cannot be Africa as a whole if the whole Africa is not controlled or conducted by Africans. Would you agree with me or not? If Libya is controlled by Arabics instead of Africans, then that part of Africa who's attached to Africa can't be controlled by Africans. If Morocco is controlled by Arabics instead of Morocco Africans, that part can't be controlled by Africans as a whole unless it was African controlled. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's not about tribalism. It's about definition and defiance of who you are and your pedigree and bloodline. What I mean by that? In today's time, in 2023 and beyond, other ethnicities are trying to take over the world. They want a new world order. And the most powerful way you can do it is to understand your sovereign freedom and independence and conquering other countries that has not been conquered and has not been colonized. But if you don't know who you are, how can you colonize or conquer that property or country? You can't do it. You can't say you're an African in Europe or an African in America under those exact credentials and say you colonize in the property, island, or anything in that manner without knowing who you are or whatever you think you for entity, identity you want to identify as. For it to be properly done and for you to properly own it, it must be through your pedigree and bloodline. For an example, if you notice how Russia and America want ownership of Antarctica, that can't come without sovereignty, flags, banners, ownership, and empowerment. So some of our people is still going through a psychosis in the psychic mind of not even knowing how to identify ourselves. So more or less own it in the proper manner. I'm not saying this to talk down on no one. I'm saying this because this is how they are legally and lawfully ahead of us. And it's not because we're dumb. Our people are not dumb. The issue is they had a great head start. I can confirm this personally because in my culture, it is taught. My forefathers and the pharaohs, before any human colonization from the Arabs and the Europeans, there was colonization from beings who were not human. And it goes back to the beastly system that I stated before previously. See, in my culture, it is normal to have an understanding and an overstanding of certain reptile beings that's not human, as well as beastly beings with fur and horns. So we have an open mind and an open understanding because it's intertwined with our culture. So we have been studying the colonization, not just when the Europeans did it, not just when the Arabs did it, but we've been studying since other beings that's not human-like has done it as well, which has carried on to now human colonization. So our outlook as Nubians and the Nubian community, as far as colonization, enslavement, it starts with the Arabs first, then Europeans. But before those human people, it was beings that were not human. So in our psychic mind, in our perspective, we're taking it back from the ancient times all the way to the present. I hope I'm making myself very clear. And I've come to realize that the other particular groups who do the same are the Israel Jewish community and the Republicans. Because once your boundary of the enslavement starts with just humans, then it's easy to blame the white man for everything. The white man in America that's Republican, that is not our biggest threat. A threat that's bigger than them is the Europeans and NATO. Then I think of another threat that's not equivalent or bigger is the Arabic League now. Now they have all come together as the Arabic League. So the average typical white man in America is not the biggest threat. Not even close. Now that's just in human form. Then there's other superpowers outside of the human form. So to even blame the typical average white American who just want to be independent from Europe, that's like the smallest of our worries, really. It's other super forces and powers that oppose our continent as a whole. We don't have time to keep just blaming the white man when he just wants to be independent from Europe. And there's certain parts of Africa who wants to be independent from Europe as well. But there's also certain parts of Africa who needs to be independent from the Arabs as well. And that's where I'm stepping in. For my people and my community and my country. I love Africa as a whole. Yes, I do. But I have to first focus on home. Just like if you're from Kenya or Ghana or Senegal, if everybody focus on their primarily country and from their bloodline and pedigree, the whole continent can improve as a whole. When we focus on our country and then come on a compliance of our continent, we can improve as a whole. But we can't really say the whole Africa as a whole can and will improve if all Africans don't own the whole part of Africa. It's Africans who's over Africa, then it's Arabs who's over Africa, then there's still Roman, European laws and individuals that's overpowering certain Africans. In order for us to even say, as a whole continent, we want to improve, we have to first know who we are, own our stuff, own everything, not be in loans in debt, and really own the whole continent, or the whole continent will never be able to be what it was before colonization. That was the most tremendous time. As long as we can always agree to put away our ego, if we can put away our ego and thrive as a unit, as one unison, it will be great. But if our ego get in the way, and if we're constantly divided, then we can't thrive as a whole. So individual countries will have to do it individually and somehow unify with love somewhere in the middle. I also want to mention in the midst of this, my perspective and reason why I choose particular allies that I chose. The Latino community, that's a given. I don't even have to go into depth with that. They've been supporting me for years. But the Israel Jewish community, they have not only supported me legally, they also have supported me as far as historical events. My forefathers, Tahakan, certain pharaohs from Nubia, at one point in time had helped the people in leadership in Israel who were Jewish a long time ago. So my forefathers helped their forefathers. So it's kind of almost like history repeating itself again. But we see eye to eye with certain things and certain people who oppose us. And we also have to keep in mind, I understand the difference between the African Jews and the Israel Jews, but we have to keep in mind in history, a European as well as an African Jew at one point in time came together and they made it and created children. And their offspring is the reason why we have African Jews as well as Israel, who may proceed as European Jews, if that's what you want to call it. But to me, they're Jews. And the bloodline can trace them both. We have to keep that in mind. So I keep that in reference in mind, as well as our history together as Israel Jews and Nubians. And also I keep in mind that we have certain goals to be met. I may not agree with them 100% with every single thing. They may not agree with me 100% with every single thing. That's okay. We have common interests. And what we don't agree with, then that's for their personal culture, and this is for my personal culture. But we have great reasoning to work together and reason together. What happened in the history doesn't have to repeat, and some things in history may repeat. But I think we're more sophisticated in 2023 to understand that we can reason it together. And it's the same scenario with the Republicans. I'm not expecting them to be perfect at all. I'm not perfect. They're not going to be perfect. But at the end of the day, in America, it's about business and commerce, and they teach me that in a local and a global perception of things. I have to give them credit for that, inclusive of what I already knew, within addition of what I've already been taught, in addition of what I've been taught in the Freemason organizations. And speaking of organizations, I want to clarify this. I am currently not in no organizations. I'm not in Freemasonries. I respect them, but I am not active in it. I am not in the Illuminati. I respect them in their position, but I am not active in it. I am currently in no organizations. I just represent myself and my country. I have in the past, but that was my past. That was a phase in my life. I learned what I learned, but I am currently not in it, in no organization, nor am I in anything that will give me a commercial status or a commercial identity. Like I said, that was a phase in my life in my younger years, and I appreciate what I have learned, but I'm in a different phase in my life, and it's about me, my people, my country, and my culture. But ironically, I've come to learn and find out a lot of things that's within these organizations, as far as hieroglyphics, signs, and symbols. It's actually from my culture. So I can understand now the confusion of why some people think that I may be in these organizations, because what y'all may not be aware of is a lot of these organizations are a spin-off from my history. So you're going to see a lot of similarities within me in the organizations like Freemasonry, the Illuminati. And a lot of it is not just a spin-off from my history and culture, but a lot of other organizations outside of that can possibly be a spin-off of other African cultures. We're just not granted the credit for it. But that would be another topic for another day. One thing I also want to confirm with my people is that I care for all of us as a whole. But I understand everybody's not going to care for me the same way. We come from over 50 different countries. That's over different 50 personalities. So that's over 50 different personalities. It's very critical that we identify our people and know who we are by pedigree. It has nothing to do with tribalism. Of course, our main goal, I strongly believe, is to improve Africa first as a whole, the whole Africa. But once that is done and complete, we can't stop that. The notion that I have, we can't stop that. Because there's still other superpowers who's trying to take over this beautiful continent. There's a whole lot more to see on this flat earth. There's a whole lot more continents and countries to discover on this flat earth. And a person like me, I want that to be a part of Africa too. So it's about Africa as a whole, true. But I want to expand our mind frame more to other countries that have not been discovered. Our independence, our flag, that will make and expand that to be Africa too. We gotta think more in a wider way. I'm sorry, I take that back. We don't have to do nothing. I'm going to think in a more broader way, and the people from my country, under my flag, and under my banner, we're going to think in a more broad, expanded way. So, if you from, let's say, Liberia, and you discover property that nobody has colonized or owned, that's not attached to Africa, make that Liberia too under your independence. Let's take it to that level. Why? Because everybody else is doing it. See, one thing you have to understand about me, I do not have no intent to compete with no other African or Black American. I'm not your competition. You're not my competition, from my point of view. I don't know how you think. I can't control how you think. That's out my power and will. But as far as Rocki and my people, we're not thinking about competing against people who look like us. That's nonsense, and it don't make common sense. Why do that when the people who colonize us is still overpowering us? So I deliver in the combination of everything that I experienced and learned, and how it could benefit me and my country and my people. So that's how I conclude why I choose to have certain people I want to work with and certain people I want to ally with. But I just want you all as Africans to keep in mind that I understand your frustration and I agree with it. But I just want you to keep in mind and remember in your memory bank that the way you feel about Europeans is the same way I feel about the Arabics and their culture and history that's been oppressing us. So I'm not going to really want to work with anybody that I know who complies to their rulership or who complies to their religion, because it was used as a tool for oppression against me and my people. If they're African descent, I don't hate them. It just means I can't work with them. It would be nothing personal, because they should do what's best for them in their country, and I'm going to do what's best for me in my country and the people of that land. In conclusion of this, I just want to say, I hope I cleared things up that maybe some people have questioned about me, or any further questions about me and what I plan on doing for me and my people and the revival of Nubia, please feel free to ask me in private so we can talk in private. What I'm doing on video, I do not want to do this. This is a last resort. I really rather have private conversations. I'm doing this publicly to show the public that sometimes I can open up. I'm not just a corporate robotic individual. I'm not like that. I have culture, I have life, I have history. The way I see things in life, you got to have culture. You got to know where you're from, because if not, the Western world can easily influence you and make you evolve into a corporate robot. I see it all the time, all over this planet with our people. You got to have culture connections. And there's a difference between culture and commerce. If something was for the outlet of making money or commerce or business, that's not culture. That's commerce. And even if you did try to apply it as culture, then you will be placing yourself and your freedom right back under the power and the rulership of the Pope. We have to remember, the ring the Pope has, it represents St. Peter, the fisherman. Fisherman pertains with commerce. And this is for all people, but especially the men. Remember, these words I'm about to state places you in the act of commerce and business every time, whether it's verbal contract or paper contract. Marriageship, relationship, shipping and handling, ordered and shipped, partnership, mothership, mother vessel, businessship, ownership. And I'm hoping that you can catch the pattern, but it deals with commerce. Anything that pertains with the shipping, you're dealing with business and commerce. And if you're not free from under the Democrats' thumb, then you're not free from under the laws of the Pope.